On the interior, Smith got a piece of it.
The Indianapolis apartment felt unbearably suffocating that humid June evening, the kind of cloying air that seemed to cling to the skin and press heavily upon the chest. As Caitlin Clark sat slumped on her couch staring blankly at the faint glow of her phone screen with tears streaming freely down her face, silently wondering if perhaps she should walk away from the very dream she had spent her entire life chasing, the ambition that had defined her identity since she could first dribble a basketball in her parents' driveway back in Iowa. And yet, in that moment, the triumph she had always imagined now felt like the most devastating mistake of her young life. How is it possible, she thought, that achieving everything one has ever wanted can suddenly feel like a cruel trick of fate? A poisoned chalice offered with one hand and snatched away with the other. This was not merely the pressure of sport. It was the crushing weight of expectation, the stinging venom of public criticism, the gnawing silence of isolation, and the inner voice that grew louder with every missed shot and every turnover whispering mercilessly that perhaps she was never good enough after all. What would soon unfold, what you are about to discover in the course of this story, was the darkest and most private moment in Caitlin Clark's professional career. A month-long spiral that saw her confidence disintegrate, her love for the game dissolve into anxiety, and her spirit collapse beneath the scrutiny of fans and commentators, only to be unexpectedly interrupted by a quiet act of love from her mother, and Clark, who made a choice that not only rescued her daughter's fledgling WNBA career but also transformed their relationship in ways neither could have foreseen. For behind the record-breaking rookie season that the world would later celebrate, behind the Rookie of the Year trophy and the highlight reels, lay a hidden month so brutal that Caitlin had already drafted a retirement announcement, fully intending to vanish from the court before her story had even begun. And it was only a mother's intuition, armed with nothing more than a suitcase, a cooler filled with homemade food, and an unshakable determination, that prevented one of basketball's greatest talents from disappearing into obscurity before history could ever know her name. In those early weeks of her professional career, the statistics were merciless, numbers that told a story she had never encountered in her glittering college years at Iowa. 20 turnovers in her debut game, an unheard-of collapse for someone hailed as the future of the sport, then single-digit scoring in her second appearance, and an Indiana Fever team that stumbled to a 0-4 start, each loss magnifying the doubt that spread like wildfire among pundits and fans alike. Every sports commentator had an opinion, most of them sharp as knives. Perhaps she was overrated, perhaps college glory did not translate to the professional stage, perhaps she had crumbled beneath the spotlight, and Caitlin, usually so adept at filtering out noise, found herself devouring every word, every headline, until the voices outside merged with the poisonous thoughts inside her own head. "Maybe I'm just not good enough," she whispered one night into her phone during a late call with her former college teammate, Kate Martin, her voice hoarse from crying, her confidence shattered by a string of performances that bore no resemblance to the dominance she had once displayed on national television. And as she lay on her couch with the blinds drawn, she felt the apartment closing in on her, the walls shrinking with every tick of the clock, the piles of unpacked boxes looming as mute reminders that she had uprooted her entire existence, left behind the familiar comfort of Iowa, and come to Indianapolis for a dream that now mocked her. Social media, once a source of adoration and connection, became unbearable. Every notification was another blade, fans who had once sung her praises now questioning her heart, her skill, her very worth. She had stopped opening her accounts altogether, unable to face the cruelty of strangers whose disappointment disguised itself as analysis, whose criticism carried the sting of betrayal. What the public did not know, and what Caitlin had never intended anyone to see, was that she had begun keeping a secret journal in those first weeks. Not a diary of progress or tactical adjustments, but rather a raw record of emotional deterioration. A chronicle of collapse written in ink that seemed to bleed despair. Day 18. Missed 8 shots today. Coach looked disappointed again. I can see it in everyone's eyes. They're wondering if they made a mistake with me. Then later, day 23. Another loss, 7 turnovers, the fans were booing. I don't think I belong here. And finally, most devastatingly, day 28. I can't do this anymore. I'm letting everyone down. Maybe it's time to admit I'm not cut out for this level. Each entry was a dagger, each line stripping away a layer of the resilient, confident young woman who had once stared down hostile arenas and silenced critics with her jumper. Now she was a hollow version of herself, drowning beneath the current of expectation. But far away in West Des Moines, Iowa, Caitlin's mother was living through her own crisis. One defined not by statistics but by the tremor in her daughter's voice during their daily calls, by the heaviness in Caitlin's sighs, by the pauses where laughter used to be. She had watched every game, seen every turnover, read every article, but more than that, she had felt her daughter slipping away, and had seen Caitlin struggle before with injuries, with slumps, with criticism, but never like this. The fearless competitor who once dominated college basketball was vanishing, replaced by someone who questioned her right to exist on a professional court. Brent, and said one evening to her husband after another heartbreaking call with their daughter, "I'm going to Indianapolis. She needs me." Brent, weary but pragmatic, replied gently, "Honey, she's 22 years old. Maybe she needs to figure this out on her own." But Anne's response, firm and resolute, would later become the cornerstone of how the entire Clark family understood crisis. She's been figuring things out on her own her whole life. Right now, she needs to remember that she's not alone. And so, with little fanfare and without so much as a warning text, and packed a suitcase, filled a cooler with Caitlin's favorite meals and homemade cookies, and boarded a flight to Indianapolis, determined to do what coaches, teammates, and journalists could not remind her daughter of who she truly was beneath the storm of doubt. At precisely 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, Caitlin, lost in a haze of exhaustion on her couch, heard an unexpected knock at the door. For a moment she considered ignoring it. She wasn't expecting anyone, and the thought of facing another human felt unbearable. But then came the voice, achingly familiar, tender yet firm. "Caitlin, it's Mom. Open up." The sound broke something deep within her, and she stumbled to the door, her legs weak, her chest tight, tears already welling again. And when she opened it to find and standing there with her characteristic half-smile, eyes filled with concern, suitcase at her side, Caitlin collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "I can't do this, Mom." She wept into her mother's shoulder, her body trembling with the weight of despair. "I'm failing at everything. I'm not good enough for this level," and held her tighter, stroking her hair, her heart breaking but her resolve hardening. "Baby, you're not failing. You're learning, and I'm here to help you remember the difference." In that moment, Caitlin experienced something more profound.
Bucket.
Pull-up Ogunbowale has come alive in the first half, 15.
Excellent defensive possession right out the gates by...
"Show me everything," and Clark said softly but firmly, her voice carrying the kind of authority only a mother could wield. "The games, the criticism, the journal I know you've been keeping. I want to understand exactly what you're going through." For the next 3 hours, Caitlin sat opposite her mother in that dimly lit Indianapolis apartment, and with trembling hands she unfolded the full story of her suffering, her fears, and her despair. She showed in the journal entries that she had guarded so carefully, the ones where every page bled with doubt and pain. She read aloud the cruel comments from social media that replayed in her mind even when she tried to sleep. She admitted to the sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling, convinced she had made a catastrophic mistake by ever pursuing professional basketball, and listened with the patience and compassion of someone who had carried her daughter's burdens long before the world had ever heard her name. She took notes, asked gentle questions, nodded at the right moments, and slowly began to piece together the full extent of Caitlin's torment. But what Caitlin did not yet know was that her mother had come prepared with